How to access the Emergency Response Data Platform. Any public safety agency can access life-saving emergency data through the RapidSOS Emergency Response Data Platform. There are two ways of doing so. RapidSOS Portal is a powerful web-based tool that enables you to manage emergencies and access location and supplemental data for every call in your jurisdiction. Signing up for RapidSOS Portal is easy and only takes a few minutes. In addition to emergency management tools and data, RapidSOS Portal includes a training platform as well as administrative tools to manage user permissions, track usage, and analyze trends in your agency. To learn more and sign up for RapidSOS Portal, please visit rapidsosportal.com. RapidSOS also integrates with every major CAD, CPE, mapping, or other public safety softwares. With an integration, you can receive RapidSOS data through your existing workflow, and you won't need any additional screens, tabs, or windows. To learn more about integrations, visit rapidsos.com/public-safety-partners.
If you are stumbling upon this video on YouTube and it is after, I would say today, June 19th, even though we were officially ending on June 21st, this will be the last live session. And if you would like access to all of the previous recorded materials from this last session, go ahead and head over to onscene1st.com/training/study ENP and fill out the form there, and you will be added to the Google group where you are able to access all of the recordings, the PDFs, as well as the MP3s and any practice exams and any other materials that I have sent. All right. My computer's acting wonky. Usually I'm on a much bigger screen, so I apologize. If you do want to be notified of any of the fun, cool things that I do on a regular basis, head on over to the website onscene1st.com and go ahead and register there for our newsletter. There'll be one that's going out in the very near future. So if you want to head on over there as well. I want to say thank you to RapidSOS, my premier study group sponsor. They have been with me since the beginning of the first session as we close out the last live session for now, and it is number 8. So lots of ENPs have come through the live sessions. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to have the materials available and update them accordingly. I'm just realizing that having a consistent day for a period of time is proving to be a bigger challenge. And so I will continue with the study group. It's just going to be kind of behind the scenes. So if you, but this section, management of the employees, this is 25% of the 50% that is management. So I will reiterate, if you have been in communications for a long time, do not just rely on the fact that you think you know the things when it comes to management of employees. There are some very specific questions that are asked, things that maybe you've never experienced before. There's also some things, I just figured I'd say it right now because I was looking at some of them before I got started. There are some things that are on the exam that folks had brought back to my attention. So they would say, hey, I've never heard of, I never heard you speak of halo effect. Because in the beginning, I didn't speak about halo effect because it's not on the body of knowledge and it's not in the study guide. So I wouldn't even begin to know the fact that the exam would have anything called the halo effect on it. But there's stuff on the exam about halo effect. So there are some topics that folks have said, hey, did you ever go over this? I don't recall seeing this. And towards the end of the session, I'm going to have kind of a catch-all of I have a list of things that folks have brought to my attention that they may not have seen in any of the study materials or I didn't go over. And so I will review those things as well to the best of my ability as to what they are. And hopefully that'll help you at least navigate through a couple of those particular topics. But I know halo effect is one of them, and it's kind of from this particular section. But just know that some of the things that are in this section are based on feedback or other documents that are listed in the 911 in the study guide. So I do the best I can getting you the information that I think is valuable. So just a few tidbits that they want you to know is that the single most important component of the PSAP is the human being. And if you know me, you know that I agree because I am a people-driven person. I could go on long times for the conversations that I want to have with folks about the importance of our people being the most important component. Some think it's the technology, and without the technology, we couldn't do the job that we did do. And it's actually the other way around. Any major changes will affect them and they should be included. There are a couple of places we're going to talk about salary. Here's where the first part is. And while salary is important, lack of other benefits have proven to have a negative impact. So lacking of training, growth potential, the environment in which we work in, the working hours, these are all things that can negatively impact the well-being of the telecommunicator and the members of the communication center. Lack of advancement possibilities can force personnel to quit or move to another job that offers such possibilities. As we know, there isn't always room for upward movement in a 911 center. If you look at my center, it was me as the chief dispatcher, and there was no other positions. There wasn't a supervisor's position. Everybody was kind of on the same page. So unless I left, there was not going to be any advancement opportunities. And sometimes, folks will seek employment opportunities elsewhere. A poor physical environment in the communication center's environment, such as heating, air conditioning, ventilation, lighting, etc., can also add to the employee's stress and dissatisfaction. And we did go over this, that piece of it a little more in depth last week when we went over the health and safety things, but it is noted here also on the employee side of the management materials. As far as staffing and scheduling goes, work schedules have a significant impact on the staff. We know that. And that the schedule also has a large impact on not only the mental aspect of the telecommunicators, but a financial aspect as well. Lack of coverage on the shifts leads to more overtime, which increases the budget. Labor costs are often the largest budget item, as we talked about with budgeting a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, the goal is to be adequately staffed. And that means adequately staffed isn't just having enough people to cover the shifts, but adequately being staffing for highs and low demand cycles. A large city that I work with had the opportunity to increase pay over New Year's. A lot of times there is holiday pay will start at like midnight on the holiday, but that isn't where the significant bulk of the need was. So they were able to secure additional funding to fill the seats earlier in the evening on New Year's to make sure that they were staffed adequately, because they know that's one of the busier nights of the year, and they wanted to make sure that they were adequately staffed, and it worked. That's great. but the other side of it also is not having too many folks scheduled and sitting there staring at each other if the call volume doesn't warrant it. Now, I know that a lot of it of what we do is not predictable. However, there are times that we know that things are going to be a little bit more busier than what they normally are. So we can definitely plan for that. A poorly designed schedule can lead to fatigue, boredom, and turnover. And here are just a couple of the characteristics that a poorly designed schedule can lead to. So when the schedule is not designed properly, it can lead to long-term assignments on an undesirable shift. So if we're not fully staffed, then folks that are new may end up on the overnight shift for a really, really, really long time. Frequent shift reassignments. So if the coverage isn't adequate in one place, folks may need to shift to work somewhere else. Inadequate time off, which makes grumpy little elves. I can assure you that. Long periods of consecutive work days. I can't begin to tell you how many times I see people posting on social media that they're on day 14 of 18, etc. And that's just way too much. Short off-duty periods, very few weekends and holidays off, and schedules that result in unequal distribution of desirable shifts among employees, and working, away from family on important days, etc. A significant change to the schedule should include those that will be affected. A lot of times there are major changes made to the schedule, and the folks that it's affecting are not, they don't even have an option. They're not communicated with. It is necessary to keep the lines of communication open to keep people happy. Some other human resource considerations when it comes to scheduling and staffing is what works for one PSAP may not work for all PSAPs. There are times that labor unions may need to be in negotiation. One agency I'm working with, they've been having struggles with their scheduling for quite some time. And while the admin staff has made several suggestions, the union is kind of blocking that process of moving it forward. And we have to be more understanding and involve everybody, right? So we can't just do for ourselves when it comes to something like that. So that would be considered a human resource consideration when it comes to scheduling. And then sworn versus non-sworn employees. There are different state laws that dictate how many hours certain positions can work in a row. So that may be a human resource consideration, etc. So just need to be careful there. And some agencies will have both sworn and non-sworn personnel that actually work in the communication center. And that can pose a consideration challenge as well, because if I'm, say, on the law enforcement side and my pay scale is much higher, and I go and I work in the communication center as overtime, there might be a blended overtime rate scenario that has to take place, which again then leads into folks being unhappy and disgruntled. So lots of considerations to take there. As far as our people go, they are part of the policies and procedures is not necessarily the personal aspect or personnel aspect of it. It's more how it affects the people in the 911 center. So we'll discuss the development of policies and procedures, which they set the framework on how the agency functions as a whole. They are living documents. They should be living documents, which allow for advancements. If there's technology advancements, if there's changes in the number of personnel, if there's changes in the structure of the department, or a removal of districts or folks are merging or you're regionalizing, they should be able to be adjusted. And I promise you, as a previous chief dispatcher and working with many administrative folks, I promise you they are not sitting in their office figuring out how to update policies to tick the frontline folks off. I promise they're not doing that. The majority of the time when policies and procedures change or get updated, there is a valid reason for that. They must fulfill the mission of the center. However, there has to be flexibility in the accomplishment of that mission. One of the things that I say in my training all the time is policies and procedures are in place that if A, B, and C happens, you're going to do 1, 2, and 3. And in public safety, B is missing sometimes, D gets added, and you have to improvise. And so one of the other phrases that I adopted that my folks knew that I said all the time was, you defend why you did do something versus why you didn't. And if you can justify why you stepped out of a policy and it was valid and it makes sense, and the majority of the folks that you work with would have done the same thing, then chances are you're going to fare much better than just doing nothing. So they do have to be fluid. They do have to accommodate the mission, but they do have to be flexible as well. Policies and procedures, training, and quality assurance must all be aligned. By having them aligned, it'll fill in any gaps in the process. Again, I always go back to either my agency or some of the agencies that I'm working with. One of the agencies that I worked with a couple of years ago had me evaluate their EMD program. And before we could even move forward with evaluating the EMD stuff, we had to go back and look at the policies and procedures for EMD, because very quickly I realized their folks were not doing EMD. They had the product. They were using an APCO tool, and they were supposed to be doing it, but they weren't. And the policies were weak there. So we had to make sure that the policy said, you will do it. Because if we are trained and we are supposed to be doing it and one person isn't doing it or 3 people aren't doing it, then it's putting them and the agency in a liable situation. And then once we got the policies in place, they had to be trained on what was actually going to be critiqued. And then we had to accommodate number one, we had to create the forms to accommodate the EMD program, because what a lot of folks do is they will just settle for the forms that come with the program. Well, that might not capture everything in the quality assurance. So what we learned very quickly is that the protocol would say this, this, and this, but the form that was evaluating was not matching up with the actual product. So you need to make sure that happens. And this way we can identify any gaps that are happening, right? Because if I get checked off for something that's not actually in the protocol, or I'm doing something in the protocol and I'm getting gigged on it over here, that doesn't make sense. So speaking of the quality and performance management, you need to know the difference between quality assurance and quality improvement. And they seem like they're the same, but they are different. So quality assurance is just that. It's assurance that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and the product that you are advertising and offering is exactly what it is that they are getting. So assuring that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing. So the act of providing assurance that a product or service will fulfill the components by inspecting products and providing a report on how many products meet the standard versus how many did not. So that's where you get your compliant and your non-compliant. So it has to be, it's almost like the evaluation process. We need to assure that it is being done correctly. The quality improvement piece uses the information that we got through that analyzing and that process, and we determine why things are happening the way that it is. Are folks compliant? Are they not compliant? Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing, or are they not doing what they're supposed to be doing? And then once we have analyzed that information against the quality assurance responses, then actions are put into place to improve the process that is set in front of us. So whatever it is that has to be done to move this forward. And I just gave you an example of that as well. So first step that I did when I evaluated the EMD program for this agency was I asked them to send me 25 medical calls. That's it, just 25 medical calls. I did nothing else but look at their EMD program and follow the prompts. And we realized very quickly that we had to go back to the drawing board. So we were not assured that things were being done the way that they should be. There are 4 questions that drive the quality assurance: quality management, quality improvement, QA, QI, whatever it is that you want to call it, but I'm going to just call it the get better at doing what we're doing process. So these are the 4 questions. What do I need to do? So that's going to be your policies and procedures, right? So your policy is what is it that I need to do? How do I need to do it? And that's going to be listed in the procedures and the protocol. How well does it need to be done? And that is going to coincide with the standards for the products that you're using. Most of the time, 90% compliant. And how will I know that I'm doing the right thing? That would drive the quality assurance, quality improvement, and feedback process. So they make reference to the standard for quality improvement, quality assurance and quality improvement. That is a national APCO and NINA ANSI certified standard. Now I'm going to talk about ANSI probably in a recording, but that an ANSI standard just basically means they followed all of the rules to create this standard. ANSI doesn't mean that they approved the standard as it's written. ANSI just makes sure that they went through the proper process in creating the standard. And so if you have not seen this standard, I highly recommend that you check it out. Make sure that you're doing the things that you should be doing when it comes to creating any type of quality assurance and quality improvement program. So in the PDF, that will be a clickable link. You just click on that, it'll bring you right to that standard. But as far as the manual goes, we have 10, I think, best practices that are listed that they want you to know. Best practice number 1, the whole call should be reviewed, not just the intake. I will say that I was so far behind in my quality assurance and quality improvement that we didn't always get to evaluate the dispatch part of the call. The only benefit that I had was that my dispatcher was usually on the call while they were dispatching because it was a 1-person center. So we were able to kind of capture it real time versus it being a separate transmission that needs to be listened to. But the whole call should be listened to and critiqued and assessed. Best practice number 2, how many and which calls should be assessed in this process? Well, the standard recommends 2% of your call volume, and that means all calls. Police, fire, EMS, and it should be a random selection. Now, that looks like a pretty specific selection, but the random selection is what has to happen first. So a random pulling of calls. However, if that random pulling of calls keeps landing on Tracy and Tracy has 7 calls, but Jeffrey has 3, it might make sense to pull a couple of Jeffrey's calls because we need to make sure that a reasonable amount are being pulled for each person. And then sometimes you might find that if it's just a random pulling, you may not get dispatcher, Shannon. Everybody should be evaluated at some point. It should be random for the most part, but there are some specific selected points. The other piece is it should also be the call taking portion as well as the dispatching portion. So the call handler and the dispatcher. And again, your forms should accommodate that as well. That was the agency that I worked with a couple of years ago. The way their process worked was they would have one sheet and it would be for the whole call, but yet the only person's name on the sheet was the call taker, but the questions were being answered about the dispatch process. Well, the dispatch process is a different person, so your forms should be accommodating to the structure of your department. The forms that you get are guidelines. They should be specific to what your process looks like. And then very specifically, any low frequency, high acuity calls, anything that is of serious in nature, high priority, doesn't happen a lot in the center, those calls should automatically be pulled and evaluated on a regular basis. Oops, not sure why those are all random. We'll just throw these up there. Best practices number 3, how do you overcome resistance to a quality assurance program? Well, first, the telecommunicator should be involved from the get-go. It should be communicated to them what's going to happen, what's going to take place, how long are they going to have to learn the process. They should not be disciplined within the first couple of months of utilizing the product or call volume wise, because a couple of months in my jurisdiction and a couple of months in a busy system are going to be two totally different things. What that telecommunicator should be told is what they need to know. What is it that they're going to be assessed on as they go through this process? Number 1, how is it that they're going to be monitored? It's going to be random, but yes, we are going to select them once in a while based on this criteria. So if you have an unconscious person, if CPR is being done, yes, that call is going to be pulled every time. So they'll kind of have an understanding. What is it that you will be measured on? How the evaluations will be conducted. Are they going to be conducted electronically, written on a piece of paper? How will the data be used and why it matters to them? In addition, how is it that you're going to go over the call with them? Now, I do a lot with the DISC human behavior model. If I knew then what I know now, I would have done things a little bit differently. I had some folks that really didn't need me sitting down, going over each and everything with them. They would have preferred me just giving them the piece of paper and they would sign off that they received that information unless there was something specific that I had to discuss with them. But I chose to go over all of them with them. And for some, that wasn't comfortable for them. They didn't like it. It caused a lot of stress and anxiety. And I know that I would do things very differently today. The other piece to overcome resistance is in the beginning, it should only be good calls. The not so great calls, unless they blatantly did something that was negligent, they should basically slide through the cracks. If it wasn't something that was totally outlandish or crazy, then it should wait. The beginning parts of this should just be all good stuff to build up their confidence, to make them feel good. There's nothing better than getting a good job on something. But if you are trying to learn something and right out of the gate, you're getting gigged and you're being told you're not doing it right, it is going to tank self-esteem, confidence, etc. So they recommend good job first, focused on the good jobs, share all the good jobs, go find the good jobs. If you don't have one, go find one and point out all the good things that exist. And then make sure that the material that you are providing back to them is objective. It is not subjective. Subjective comes from the heart and is usually starts with words like I think, I feel, versus those that come through the logic process of the brain. You did or you didn't. Okay. The best practice number 4 is setting up the forms. The forms should align with agencies' SOPs, which I mentioned before. They should address the whole call and focus on the 3 different areas: SOP compliance, customer service, and knowledge and skills. KSA KSA is something that you need to remember. I do have it on another page, but the knowledge and skills is definitely something that should be addressed. And when we look at customer service, sometimes customer service will appear subjective, but you can very clearly tell if, and you can tactfully explain to someone if they are being less than professional. So where I think you're being professional, or I think you're being less than professional, while it may appear subjective, there are tactful ways to look at it and say, hey, this was definitely not professional. And then even though each one of these are color coded, the form should be in black and white. The only 4 answers that should be on the form is yes, no, refused, and not applicable. And not applicable is even sketchy at best. When I was evaluating one of the centers for doing their quality assurance, I recall I had to address the fact that when somebody would ask for an address, if they didn't answer it properly and they moved on, they were marking it not applicable because they asked the question, but the caller didn't answer. And that's not the proper use of not applicable. If the person's speaking to you and you can clearly tell they are conscious, then that's not applicable, right? I didn't need to ask the question if you are conscious if I'm speaking to you on the phone. So even though there are colors there, it should be black and white. Yes, no, refuse, NA. Those are each answer to each question should fall into one of those categories. Very rarely would they not. As far as scoring goes, there should be a range and it should be pretty limited, right? So we're not going to have all kinds of different ones. Basic, needs improvement, meets expectations, exceeds expectations. And you should be shooting for meets expectations at least 90% of the time. Very rarely should folks expect to get exceeds expectations. Exceeds expectations is going to fall into that halo effect, and I'll explain that in just a little bit. Doing the job as predicted is meet expectations. If I do CPR and I follow the protocol and the caller is receiving what I'm saying and they're doing what I'm saying, that's really meet expectations. If the caller is out of control and I was successful in reeling them in and calming them down and actively listening and making sure that things were not missed, then maybe it could be exceeds expectations. Best practices number 5, ensure timely reviews and employee notification. There are a lot of folks right now that are in the sound of my voice that are behind on their quality assurance and starting all kinds of other projects and filling their time with other things. quality assurance and quality improvement should be one of the most important things in the center. This is the place where it's going to capture a couple of things. It's first going to capture the mental health and well-being of your telecommunicator, and to me, that's the priority. If I have a caller that or a critical call and my call taker handled that call and then I'm behind, so 7 months later I hear this call and I'm like, oh crap. And then I go and I say, hey, Joe, I heard you had a really bad call 7 months ago. Sorry I didn't check in, but how you doing? And especially with any other types of data, videos, pictures, etc., that'll be coming in soon. But we have to ensure that timely reviews and employee notification take place. The standard recommends a timely review, which is generally within 5 days of the call. And I know sometimes that's unrealistic, but use that as a gauge, right? If we're 3 months out, we're way outside of the standard. And if you're 7 months out, again, it goes back to this. The standard is there for a reason, is if there is ever some type of situation that happens and you have an attorney or a court involved or a death or any type of criticism or looking into an investigation, etc., one of the things they're going to look at is quality assurance. And they're going to see how far behind you are. They're going to see how many times this person has had coaching or been spoken to, and it will be part of the discovery for that particular situation. The call taker should be able to listen to their call before the review. I don't necessarily agree with this on every single call, but one of the things that I would do with my telecommunicators is if there was a call that they tanked on or was going to be non-compliant for whatever reason, I would listen to the call with them, or I would have them listen to the call and then say, hey, do me a favor, take this form and I want you to listen to it and I want you to critique it, and then I want you to go over it with me. Not because they didn't want to go over it with them, which I didn't. Nobody really wants to go over calls where people make mistakes, but allowing them to listen to their own call and critique their own call, it just does something different than me talking at them. It helps them come to the realization on their own. Best practice, accentuate the positive. Positive reinforcement is a must, and it motivates and inspires employees. One of the things that I learned with the way that I was doing it is I was very objective. However, I would always put in my 2 cents, and I would make recommendations, not necessarily on the paper, but hey, if you did this, or you should have done this, and then this wouldn't have happened. That then becomes subjective. The other thing is for every negative thing that is told to them regarding the call, it's going to take like 5 positive things to undo that one negative thing. So when they walk out of any type of review, we want them feeling better about what they've done. So really accentuate the positive when possible. Number 7, consider adding screen recording to the quality assurance reviews. Recorded reviews can help and protect the telecommunicator, especially if something goes wrong with the system. And it can also help identify any missteps in the process. So a lot of folks do not like having the screen recorded. However, it does protect both you and the agency. Best practice number 8, selecting the right QAE, quality assurance evaluator. This person, first and foremost, needs to know the policies and procedures. They should not be evaluating calls if they are not fluid in the policies and procedures. So if they're not compliant in their call handling, they shouldn't be doing it for others. They need to adhere to the policies and procedures. There's a difference between knowing and doing. So again, quality assurance evaluators, they should not only know the policies and procedures, they should be following the policies and procedures. And they need to be able to discuss hard things with other telecommunicators professionally and productively, right? So who is that person? Are they able to have hard conversations? Are they cut and dry? everything is, has to be a certain way, has to be my way, etc. Just use caution when you're picking the folks that are doing this. Number 9, calibrate often for consistency. I know some agencies, they're calibrating at least on a weekly basis. They pick one call that all the QAEs will critique to make sure that everybody is on the same page. If I'm doing it one way and you're doing it another way, it's not going to work out very well, right? And number 10, let technology do the work for you. The first thing I'm thinking of is what I was talking about at the beginning of this presentation. I literally said the word for the company that is recording said information right now, and it responded to me in the chat. Mind blown, right? There is technology out there that can be listening to calls, listening for inflections in voices, can notify folks to say, hey, this person, their tone of voice was way off base. They use these words X number of times, etc. So we're getting to a place where technology needs to be our friend and not a hindrance, right? So let's look at that. The next section is recruitment, selection, and placement. So we'll first start with recruitment. The recruitment process should be ongoing. You will never get fully staffed if you wait for the need to arise. You almost need to be hiring all the time to keep, or at least getting education out there on what you do and encouraging folks to apply regularly. The recruitment process these days should be planned and focused on it should be planned and focused on, sorry, I'm screwing myself up. I need to fix that typo. So it should be planned and it should be focused. By being focused, going to job fairs, maybe at educational facilities, professional publications, or direct contact with folks that you think might be good for the particular job. What I don't recommend, 10 out of 10, not recommend, be careful in who you solicit to come into your 911 center to hire for a job. Ask somebody for their contact and their name and do a little research on them. Just case in point, was at a dinner, a 911 professional dinner. There was about 20 of us there. One waitress, she was phenomenal. She did an amazing job. She had everybody's order. She was on top of everything. And one of my friends and colleagues said, hey, we're hiring dispatchers. You should come apply. She went through the whole hiring process. And let's just say her extracurricular activities on YouTube and some other media outlets did not work out so well. So while direct contact might work in some aspects, just be careful in that as well. Prerequisites, if you have prerequisites such as, they have to at least be 18. They should have 3 years customer service experience. They should have certain certifications. You're going to focus in on your search. You might not get as many folks as you want. So the more prerequisites you have, the more focused the search is going to be. And the focus should be ultimately to hire and retain the best possible candidate. That doesn't mean because they have experience, they're the best possible candidate. Just keep that in mind. As far as selection and placement goes, assessing the ability to thrive in the communication center is just as important as testing for known skills and abilities. KSA, that. You are going to see that again, known skills and abilities. Knowing who they are as a person is also important. You can teach people skills all day long. There was a study with the Carnegie Foundation that basically said that 85% of a workplace aptitude is soft skills. Who you are as a person. Are you kind? Are you supportive? Are you a team player? Do you care about others? Do you care about the work that you do? Do you care about yourself and how you present yourself? 85% falls into that category. 15% is known skills and abilities. And the majority of known skills and abilities can be taught. It is the personal attributes that can't always be taught. So the entire hiring process should take no more than 7 weeks. That's what our manual says. We know that logistically and realistically, that may not be the case based on a lot of the things that we have to do, but just keep that in mind. For testing purposes, it should not take more than 7 weeks. Each component of the selection and placement, while many agencies are different, these are some of the things that are going to continue to pop up or may be part of each process. You may be missing a piece may be added, but generally speaking, these are the things that folks will tend to look for or look to do in their selection and placement. Number 1, application process. Number 2, once we go through the application process, they may offer a written or practical exam, such as the critical testing or something similar. They will then move them into an interview process. A lot of times they use an interview panel, maybe bringing in the police chief, the fire chief, etc. And then you would make a conditional offer. Once you make that conditional offer is when you can go towards the next batch of criteria or things that can be done. Now, I stopped it here on conditional offer because more often than not, 2 of them federally mandated, one of them usually waits for a conditional offer. But these are the things that will come after a conditional offer, meaning, hey, we really want you to work here based on your application, your exam, your interview. We think you'll be a great fit. However, we need you to do a couple of things before we give you a final offer. So contingent on anything coming back in under these things, we would like to offer you that employment, but these have to come first. So criminal background and reference checks. The reason why these usually come after, this is just in general come after, is because it's a lot of time and work and effort. And if you didn't get through, I'm not going to do a criminal background check, etc. Well, let me rephrase that. Maybe I would do that, but if you notice, there's no asterisk on this one. So the criminal background check and references check, that can be done prior to the conditional offer, but these 2, any type of medical exam or polygraph or psychological testing, you see the little red asterisk there, that means they cannot be done before a conditional offer is made. So in other words, we are hoping to hire you, but pending your medical exam, polygraph, and psych test is what's going to allow us to finally give that full job offer. So keep those 2 in mind. Here's a little extra reiteration, because I'm pretty sure you'll see it again, is not before the offer. Federal law dictates the psych, medical, and polygraph tests cannot be made before a conditional offer is made. And if you want to look at it this way, those 3 things are going to cost you money. So if you're given those choices, those 3 things right there, it's going to be an outside entity that you have to bring in to do, and it's going to cost you money. So it's a little bit of a commitment. So we're going to at least give them a conditional job offer before those things take place. Some of the things that the agency must know is, do we have an education requirement before the job is posted? Will they be subject to a background investigation? Will there be drug screening provided? Is there a minimum age requirement? Which, yes, there can be a minimum age requirement, but we cannot discriminate based on age. And I'll give you the age discrimination in just a little bit. Will there be fingerprinting that is done, and is there pre-screening, psych tests, personality exams, etc.? And they have to be credible, not like this type of situation, like what type of potato are you? Like they have to be a credible source. The testing categories that are usually used when testing for our telecommunicator positions should include all of these categories here. Cognitive skills, which includes oral and written comprehension and retention, physical, our stamina and endurance, rapid audio listening, typing, and even though physical is listed under typing, it's also going to be listed under clerical as well. Sensory, vision and auditory, interactive and social behavior, flexibility, reaction to stress. Clerical, your typing skills, spelling, grammar, literacy. Technical and mechanical, how you operate, or are you capable of operating office equipment? And then psychomotor, hand-eye coordination, including physical mobility. Our interviews should consist of various types. One, you could have a panel. Number two, having a peer review of that person is something that some agencies are doing. I think it's a great way to get a gauge of someone. Having different types of personalities, spend a little bit of time with this person. Some folks will even have them come in on the floor and engage with the staff and see how things go there. Some of the testing categories could be behavior-based. In this situation, list a time that you did not understand the instructions for something. Tell me how you resolve that issue. Structured, specific questions. Tell me 3 things that you love about yourself and 3 things that you don't like about yourself. Situational testing categories in an interview question. I know our police chief, whenever he would be in my interview process, he would ask a specific question about a warrant coming over the teletype for a family member. And while he would tell them there's no right or wrong answer at this point, because you don't know what to do or the training, but you're sitting in dispatch, you're by yourself, our court computer will spit off warrants for the folks in our town each day, once folks didn't show up for quarter, etc. And he would give this scenario that as you're sitting there, a warrant for an immediate family member comes across the teletype. What are you going to do about that? And then stress scenarios, putting somebody in a stressful situation. The only thing I can think of is, remember that game Perfection when you were a kid? Like, I think putting that in front of someone and having them play that is a great judge of whether or not you can keep your cool on things, because it's definitely a high pressure situation and, can potentially give an indication of how someone acts in a stressful situation. And then there are some illegal interview questions. The thing that you should keep in mind now, while this is not all of them that are listed in the manual, and when I say they're not listed in the manual, there are some of these that are listed, but the bottom line is any question that is going to potentially indicate personal information that is not relevant or does not matter for the position kind of should not be asked. So what kind of childcare arrangements do you have? I can't ask that. I can't even ask if you have children. What is your marital status? Excuse me. What does your spouse or significant other do for a living? Do you have any health issues? Have you ever been arrested? Have you ever filed a workers comp claim? Have you ever filed a discrimination complaint against an employer, and saying you're not right for the job? Do you want to go on a date? These are just some of the things that are listed, but just be mindful. Any type of question that can identify someone's race, ethnicity, religious beliefs, etc. Tell me what church you attend. Are there any, tell me the name of any types of clubs that you belong to outside of this, outside of work. Anything that can indicate a race, ethnicity, lifestyle, etc., is off limits. Compensation and benefits. So more often than not, the compensation package is out of the hands of the PSAP personnel. That's usually something through the government agency, human resources, etc. And while it is a major part of the hiring process, it is not the most essential aspect of employee satisfaction. It does help with satisfaction if it's good, but it is not what keeps somebody there. I can assure you that. Some additional considerations for our compensation benefits is additional compensation could be what their time off is, what their overtime opportunities are. Do they get additional education and training? Economic factors, pay adjustments and increases, and what their medical benefits are. Training and development is another employee piece, management of the people piece. First, training needs analysis. What are the needs of our center when it comes to training? Development and implementation of those training programs. There should be basic training, what they get when they first come in, advanced training, taking it to the next level, and then ongoing training, which is our continuing education. How are we evaluating that training? Evaluation of your training should be part of your everyday routine, but it shouldn't be seen as punitive. Okay. Identifying how well the training is going. One of the things I'm hearing in a couple of the agencies that I've been working with is, the training program isn't that great. Folks are coming out of training and they're not knowing how to do this and how to do that. There needs to be an evaluation on that. Is this something that they were taught? Is it something that they need to learn? Is it confidence? Is it over time, etc.? And then quality assurance, quality improvement of the training program itself. Very few times do we have the trainee evaluate the trainer, and that needs to be something that is being done. Trainers have a lot to do with the success of the trainee coming out of the training program. There's going to be two things here: job analysis and job description. A job analysis, each position should have a job analysis. Maybe that means that somebody comes in and does an outside look at what are the needs of this position. So a job analysis is the process used to collect information about a particular job duty, responsibility, the necessary skills, outcomes, and work environment that this particular job should have. A job analysis may include reviewing the job responsibilities of the current employees and maybe even outside agencies. So doing an internet research, or looking into other agencies that have similar demographics, size, population, etc. A job analysis is analyzing the work duties, tasks, responsibilities needed by the employee to fill that position. I said that already. Articulation of the most important outcomes or contributions needed from the position. Like, knowing that it's a 24/7 operation, right? A job analysis can also be used in performance reviews to identify or develop goals and objectives, performance standards, and evaluation criteria. Because again, when we do evaluations, the person that is being evaluated needs to know what the responsibilities are. And then that comes into the form of a written job description. So there's the analysis of the job, gathering all of the information and the data. And then there's the actual job description, which is written, which is what should be handed to each employee. And that's a list of responsibilities and functions required in that particular situation. There's various uses for that job description. Again, performance appraisals, wages, salary, and how do we create that job description? Using the analysis, interviewing those in the position, or sending out a questionnaire to the folks that are already in that position. It provides an understanding of the requirements of the job, and it can be used to collect information in the following area. Why does this job exist? What are the duties and tasks? What does the environment look like? What are the tools and equipment that needs to be used? What is the relationship with the supervisors? Are they working by themselves? Are they working independently? Are they working on a team? And what are the qualifications to be able to complete this, to be able to sustain in this particular position? As far as setting of pay rates goes, bottom line needs to be competitive. They need to compare to outside agencies in the same state that have similar demographics. What are they paying? Is it competitive? Are we way far outside of the norm? Or employees need to be taken care of if they are to stay in the center. They need to be aware of what the employees are receiving and what they are entitled to and what other neighboring agencies pay. I've watched folks walk right out of one center and into another because the pay is considerably higher in a neighboring town, similar in size, etc. They also have to make sure that the pay is not discriminatory. The discrimination age that's going to pop up for various things is 40. You're going to see that in another place, but I'm going to say it right now just in case I forget to say it again. But the age discrimination starts at 40, which is crazy. There are two types of pay rate systems when it comes to setting pay rates. And again, I said this before, this is stuff that is probably already established, has nothing to do with you, but is set to be on the exam. So while we know how our agencies work for the most part, it's important for you to know that there are other types of things out there because not every agency is the same. So there are two main types of pay rate systems. Basic rate systems pay workers a fixed amount hourly, weekly, or monthly. Okay. These are simple to operate, but offer few incentives for the workers. This is what you get paid. Variable or incentive schemes are when all or part of the pay is based on performance, skills, results, and profits. We don't usually see that in the dispatch center. We kind of use a hybrid system. We'll have an hourly rate for the folks on the floor. Directors may have a salary rate, but the hourly rate, and then maybe there's some incentive on top of it as well, where they're paying for certifications such as EMD, EPD, EFD, or maybe a bilingual telecommunicator, a CTO, working the overnights, etc. As far as employee retention goes, career planning and development is part of our retention. In other words, investing in the people. Basic, advanced, and ongoing training and education are critical to the success of the PSAP as well as employee retention. Development and training should be part of the daily operations and as supportive, not punitive. Job satisfaction and work culture should be taken into consideration. Folks need to be able to have ownership over their job, creating an atmosphere that is of ownership and pride. As a supervisor or manager, you must be the cheerleader and continuously recognizing and supporting your team and offering training. Training is going to come up in a few different places. Having promotional opportunities, lack of advancement possibilities can force personnel to quit or move to another job that offers such possibilities, as mentioned earlier in today's presentation. Sometimes you don't always see the opportunity to advance folks, but there are ways to do it even if the structure doesn't allow for it. I think the next slide, I think I have a full slide on negative retention, so I'm going to just jump over that one. So how do we keep them? As far as retention goes, we need to be fully staffed. We need to have comparable pay. The number of overtime hours in a month should be reasonable. Sufficient time off. Opportunity for growth. Positive feedback, fairness, reinforcement, and support. Training, and more training, and creating that great atmosphere. And then negligent retention is here. It is a legal concept under employment law that refers to an employer's failure to terminate or address the issue of an employee who poses a risk to others. Now, that doesn't mean just in the 911 center. It means outside of the 911 center, on the other side of the call, etc. It can happen when the employer is aware of or should have been aware of an employee's incompetence, unfitness, or dangerous behavior. However, the employer does not take appropriate action to remove the employee from the workplace or prevent them from causing harm to others. Limited information on succession planning. This all kind of goes together. First is mentioned is mentoring. Mentoring is the process whereby an experienced, highly regarded, empathetic person guides another in developing his or her ideas. Learning, personal and professional development is mentoring. Leadership development. The management process of identifying and developing employees with the potential to fill key leadership positions within the organization is identified as succession planning, meaning grooming folks in a positive way to be able to move into excuse me, leadership positions. The biggest mistake we can make as leaders is not succession planning, not giving folks the tools to succeed if you should have to not be there. And then cross-training is part of this as well. External and internal training opportunities in and out of the center. Internal for CTO, assistant supervisors, and then ongoing refresher training. And then here is the information on the halo effect. Not sure why this is on the exam, not sure where it comes from, but bottom line, what the halo effect is comes down to that fourth bullet there. This person can do no wrong. The halo effect is also called the halo error. It is a tendency for positive impressions of a person, company, brand, or product in one area to influence one's opinion or feelings in other areas positively. They just can't do anything wrong. The halo effect is the name that is given to the phenomenon whereby evaluators tend to be influenced by their previous judgments of performance or personality. Meaning, yeah, maybe I was really good in the beginning of my career. I gave a lot of effort. I did a great job, but something's not working right now. Something's not going well. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Oh, she's just having a bad day, kind of blowing it off, etc. The halo effect is a cognitive bias. It can prevent someone from accepting a person, product, or brand based on unfounded belief of what is good or bad. It may also be mentioned on the exam as a bias rating. So that came back as well, as something that was not discussed. So I'm not sure if that's the definition that they're using for the halo effect, but a bias rating, again, is when we allow our pre-existing biases to affect the evaluation of an employee, resulting in biased performance appraisals. I will give you a perfect example of the halo effect. I saw it firsthand with my asshat manager. For years, I would sit across from him and get my evaluation. Our standard was 1 to 5, 5 being the best. Every single evaluation up until the year that he and I had a falling out, my evaluations were a 5. Very rarely did I get anything less than a 5. And then the year we had a falling out, all of a sudden I'm getting 2s and 3s. And now he's bringing up things. I would make mistakes on my payroll all the time. If you've known me, you know me long enough to know that I have ADHD. I don't do details well. And that was a challenge. It was a spreadsheet. But I did my best and I put things in place, but I would still come up short and I would make mistakes. The year that the halo effect was no longer in place because he no longer liked me or my personality didn't persuade him in a positive way, then I was being critiqued for things that I had done a certain way for years. If that had continued, it actually has a negative effect. What it does is give somebody a false sense of I'm doing a great job and I don't need to improve in these areas, when in fact that's not the case. So halo effect is there. It is a bias, meaning I like you as a person, so I'm just going to go ahead and give you great reviews. I'm going to let these things slide off the wayside and just know that it is there. Crystal. Crystal asked a question and it's in the host panel. So I'll take that. Is this the same as hiring a new employee from another agency who's a good worker, but because one of the current employees has spread rumors about her to her group of friends, it impacts the way those in the group? I think it's the opposite. So I could be mistaken, but it sounds similar, but it sounds like the opposite. I'm envisioning the halo effect as somebody that has a halo on and that they can do no wrong. So I think it would be the opposite, is that if there was a rumor that was started, or not say a rumor, but somebody was hired because of their influence in another agency and they were amazing, and now they come into your 911 center, and now everybody's basically looking at this person as a superstar. They can do no wrong. What comes to mind for this for me is like they're an angel, right? So what comes into mind for me is I've seen this in a few places where somebody is hired as a director or a supervisor because out in the world, they look amazing on paper, publicly, everything's amazing. But then they come into the center and they were hired based on what the visual perception was out there, but they're not doing a great job. But they were hired because they were supposedly amazing. So there's no disconnect between the fact that they're not really amazing. It's a perception of them being amazing. Hopefully that makes sense. And there we have it. So this one section on the people thing, when folks say that there are people things on there, as you can see, there's some stuff that it's like, I don't know. I wish there were different things that were on the exam as far as the management of employees goes. But we do have one more little section on the employee piece of it. But I'm gonna put that together with the legislation stuff, because some of it is it comes down to legal stuff, etc. So with that, I'll just throw this up here real quick. If you haven't checked out the On Scene First store, you can go ahead and check that out. And here is my contact information. Quick contact form there. You can scan the QR code if you want to reach out real quick. My email address is there. Would love a like and follow on social media. And in the lower right-hand corner down there is the On Scene First Safety Net. It is a Facebook group. It's a private group for first responder for mental health and wellness. So come on over and join us there. Just answer the questions. And until next time, heroes, stay safe, stay strong, stay here. We need you. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend if it is your weekend.